is News Conference Extra with Conan Nolan.
Good morning and welcome to News Conference Extra, a special segment of Today in LA Weekend. Joining us from Washington, Chuck Todd, host of Meet the Press, which airs every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. So, Chuck, before we get into impeachment, let's talk about the former mayor of New York City. How much should we make of the fact that Michael Bloomberg is now interested in potentially running for president?
Well, I think number one is he's been wanting to run for president for 10 years. Okay, he's been preparing in some ways to run for president in the Democratic primary for probably 5 or 6 years. And so one thing I think that people need to understand is this, the quote-unquote last-minute decision, in some ways, it's not as if he hasn't been preparing. He didn't get in March because he thought Biden, that he would do nothing than dilute Biden, and he thought Biden had this. That essentially Biden had a lock on African-American voters, and he couldn't really break Biden, that vote from Biden. Now he views Biden as fading. He's worried Elizabeth Warren's going to be the nominee and that she will struggle against Trump. So ultimately, that's his rationale for doing this. I sit here, I think it certainly sends a negative message about the feelings about Biden's campaign, right? And there's already been hand-wringing in the donor community, as you know, Conan, whether in New York or Hollywood, about what the heck's going on with Biden. Can he handle this? Bloomberg essentially saying, I've lost confidence in him, I'm running, isn't helpful to Biden's campaign. It's possible while he wants to stop Warren, his mere presence as a billionaire trying to stop Warren could only help her get on a message that she much would prefer to be on, which is her economics message and going after billionaires, than she is defending how to pay for Medicare for all. So I look at this and think this is a fractured party. I didn't look like any of them other than Biden could possibly put it all back together. Biden does seem as if he's struggling. This looks like a bunch of people headed to Milwaukee without a majority, to be perfectly frank.
Let's move on to impeachment. We're going to have public hearings starting this week. How much is there a dice roll as to the public's appetite for this?
I think that's a big dice roll because I think the public is as split as Congress in many ways reflected the public. I think when they did that impeachment vote, where you have a hardened core of Republicans who just aren't listening, aren't paying attention, and even those that are in favor of this inquiry, you don't see you don't see it, that do or die feeling about it. Look, the Democrats are hoping that it does change public opinion on the right, and I'm not going to say never. The only caveat I put out here is I am curious to see what kind of impact John Bolton could have. I do expect him to at some point testify publicly. He seems to drop a million hints that he's got a lot to say. I think he wants to feel as if he's been forced to be there. I don't think he wants to look like he's trying, but I think he wants to have it done via subpoena, and have it done where he doesn't feel as if he's violating executive privilege. But I think he's the one person that might be able to penetrate that Republican bubble. And so that would be the one caveat I would hold out about what kind of impact these hearings will have.
And getting back to the campaign, there's a state Democratic Party convention in Long Beach next week where a couple of candidates said they're not going to take part. The question, though, is California, yes, we may matter in March, but after Iowa, after New Hampshire, after South Carolina, how many of these candidates do you suspect are still going to be in the race?
Well, I think there's 5 or 6 that are still going to be acquiring delegates or think they can acquire delegates in this race. I do think that we're looking at, you see now, there's a top tier of 4 that's pretty well established these days in Iowa. I think, throw in Michael Bloomberg, throw in Andrew Yang, who I think is going to be able to sustain himself a little bit further than people realize. And that's probably what my guess is that 6 for sure is still around for California, maybe 1 or 2 others, but that's 6 for sure. I guess you have to throw Steyer in there because he will have the finances to do this. But I don't know how. I still believe that many of these candidates are going to just cherry pick California, that because it's too enormous to try to win them all, but that there will be candidates that concentrate on specific markets, specific districts, specific areas of the state, just because of resource limitations, pure and simple. But they want to maximize the amount of delegates they can get out of the state.
And who's on the program this morning?
Well, we're going to do an impeachment preview with a House Democrat in the inquiry, Jim Himes of Connecticut, and a Republican senator defending the president, Rand Paul. And then we're going to talk to another Democrat that many people thought was going to get into the presidential race and did not, Sherrod Brown, Democrat of Ohio, to try to explain this fracture that I don't know if it can be healed.
Right. A lot of moderate Democrats wanted Sherrod Brown to enter that race as well. I'm wondering if he's regretting it. Listen, thank you very much. Chuck Todd, host of Meet the Press.
That's the question I'm going to ask.
Yeah, we'll be looking forward to the answer. 8 o'clock Sunday morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
You got it, bud.
Up next.